Hi, everybody.
Hi, Marlene. Hey, give me a heads count. Who's here?
Okay, who's here? Why don't we do a quick, so Sue Ellen is here, Sue Ellen Panitch, I'm Marlene Connor. And why doesn't everybody just quickly introduce themselves?
Fine.
That way we'll have a list.
Harry Craven.
Marlene Connor.
Marlene Connor. Kate, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah, I'm Kate Krookemeyer. I'm your new rep from the planning board.
Welcome.
Hi, Kate.
Thank you. Hope
Hi,
to
Kate.
get up to speed. Hi.
Terry Shepherd's here too.
Hi, Terry Shepherd.
Yep,
Dave Moore.
I'm here.
Dave Moore's here.
We see
Scott
the top-
McPherson is here.
Who's that?
Crystal Barnes is here.
Yeah, I'm Mike Lynch, interested citizen.
Mike Lynch. Okay.
Okay.
Jim Sheehan, interested citizen.
Hello, Jim.
Hello, Dave, and I saw you in person and I saw you in the paper
I
yesterday.
saw you in the paper, Dave.
Oh, yeah, I did too. Those of us that still get the paper.
Okay,
I
good.
didn't think they listed district court anymore.
Oh, that's Glenn.
It's Glenn. I recognize that voice.
I don't see his name, but I recognize the voice.
Who
Okay.
is that?
I'm on the telephone. I was trying to switch over to Zoom so I can see you folks, but I'm having difficulty doing it.
You're all right. Anybody else? That sounds good.
Albert Bowler, you want to show yourself or are you going to stay hidden?
Okay, I got Albert.
Jeff Horan is here.
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, Albert and Bernice.
Hi, Albert.
We can't hear you, Albert.
That's
You're,
great. Leave
you're
it that way.
muted.
We're
Okay.
eating supper, so we
Okay.
will be muted, etc.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Bernice.
So anybody else who has not introduced themselves?
Devin Sheehan, just here to listen in.
I don't think Terry's introduced herself.
He did.
Yes, she has.
I did, I'm here.
Okay.
Hi, Devin.
Hi,
Hey.
Terry.
Okay. So welcome everybody to our, is this our third or fourth meeting? I don't remember, but we're getting there.
I think it's our fourth.
I guess the first, Sue Ellen, you really want me to run this like a meeting?
Well, it's the only way.
Okay.
I think
We have minutes
probably
to our-
we're all in except for Kip Foley now.
So we did send to the committee members, I don't know if they're posted, but we did minutes to our last meeting.
Yes, they have been posted.
And I wonder if everybody, Jeff, thanks for doing them. And I wonder if people had a chance to read them.
Yes.
Yes, I did want to say I did make some annotations to the minutes. I added, for instance, information. People may have noticed I pulled a little bit of information from the city's website related to the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act. So we had the jurisdictional stuff in there. So we talked about it briefly, but not in that detail. And then I also, we talked about some of the properties, but I added some property details that were easily available from MapGeo. So I thought that might be helpful since I don't think I caught everything everyone said in the minutes.
Okay. Were people, do we need to approve minutes? And if so, somebody want to move to any seconds?
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Please.
Hi.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we do have one new member today to the committee, and that would be Kate. Did you want to just take a minute to talk about your interest here so we can understand your perspectives? Or
Sure. I think that everyone on the planning board has an interest in this committee, but not all of us have time to do it, including myself, but I volunteered in any case. We have been looking, I think, in the planning board at a lot of things that intersect with this issue of protecting the reservoir, and so I'm not up to speed at all on what you're doing, but I'm really looking forward to working with you. I'm a 20 or maybe 21-year resident of Holyoke at this point, and really happy to be part of this effort to figure out uses and preservation here.
great. Well, we're really happy you're here.
Thanks.
With respect to our old business, we have some items on the agenda, and I think Crystal will start with you. Crystal Barnes. You're on mute.
Sorry, I had to go through my phone. My computer's not having it tonight.
Oh, sorry. But
Right,
we,
so
yeah.
I
Go
think
ahead.
you all had asked me to look into, sort of the control, care, custody, control basically of the land of Whiting Reservoir. As you all know, Holyoke Waterworks actually owns the land. And as such, all of those duties and authority are going to fall under the Board of Water Commissioners. And then some of what they do also has to go through approval of DEP. It really depends on what the purpose is, what the use is, etc. It all falls under Mass General Laws Chapter 40, and then it goes through sort of, not necessarily, you don't really need to know about, the establishment and such, but as far as their powers, it falls under sort of the section of 39A, 39B. And then there's, a couple of other sections that might apply, but in general, what you all need to know is just that, planning and such needs to go through the water commissioners when we're really trying to decide on a proposal.
Okay. Did anybody want to follow up with Crystal, ask her any more questions at this point?
I guess I have one. So Crystal, this is Jeff Horan. Is it considered an executive agency? Is it part of Public Works?
No, Holyoke Waterworks is its own entity. They are quasi-municipal in that, they do function on behalf of the city, but we don't control what they do.
Thank you.
Okay.
Oh, could I ask a question? Mike Lynch here. Is that okay or not?
No, we will be having a meeting later on for the public, at which time please come back and ask your questions. But during this meeting, until we get to the end of our time, and only then if we have time to ask for questions, will we be taking questions. So I'll make a note that you have one, Mike, and if there's time at the end, you're on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Anyone else have any questions for Crystal? Discussions, thought, does that jive with what people were thinking up to now? Is that consistent?
Yes, it is with me.
Yes.
Okay, great. Before our last meeting, I had a conversation with Jennifer from the DCR, and I had gotten in touch with her with respect to the state's interest in some of the properties surrounding the land use, and I invited her to come to our meeting this evening. She had a conflict, so she has volunteered to come back to our meeting in 2 weeks to talk with us about their interest, their information and their interest in the reservation, and the state's interest in, in thinking prospectively from the community's perspective and from their perspective. So she did say that if she could sneak in sometime, she had another meeting starting at 6 that she needed to get ready for. Anyway, so she will be at our meeting in 2 weeks. And in the meantime, if we have any questions that we want to direct to her in advance, now I guess would be a good time to or begin to think about what that might want to be moving forward. And I think in general, where we had been collectively was, first of all, trying to understand not just the recognizing that the reservoir is not a body unto itself. There's a lot of adjoining uses, abutting properties, and it was going to be of interest and importance for us if we think about where we want to, recommendations we want to put forth and suggestions, recommendations to the city council and to frame our thinking. It's going to be important for us to contextually understand not just the Whiting Street Reservoir, but adjoining uses, abutting uses, how they interact or interact with each other. So I want to make sure that we recognize and understand, sort of their perspectives, because what happens within the Whiting Street Reservoir construct is going to be impacted by things that are happening at the abutting properties as well. And we have, we talked about at our last meeting, beginning to invite the adjoining abutting properties to come and speak with us about their plans and their current uses, their current plans, if there are any, so that we can put all these pieces of information in context. So with respect to that, for future agendas, we're going to want to make sure that we connect with, communicate with, and invite in adjacent landowners and property abutters so that we can fully educate ourselves with respect to the reservoir and, where we want to, what we want to be thinking through with recommendations potentially for the city council.
Marlene, can I interrupt for a second?
Yep.
Yoni's telling me he can't get in. Somebody needs to let him into the meeting.
Oh, I never saw it.
Okay, I'm glad he contacted you.
Okay, that just came up on my screen.
Okay. Coming, hopefully.
Yeah. I'm going to interrupt you too, because I think we have to stick to the agenda.
Yeah.
I was also supposed to check with trustees of reservations, and I spent quite a bit of time with Josh Knox, and I will boil it down to 2 sentences. Trustees of Reservations owns about 73 acres in Holyoke on which passive recreation occurs. They are interested only in passive recreation on their property and recommend the same thing for the reservoir.
Great. Anybody else have any items to report? So Water Department, DCR. Next up on our agenda. And Yoni, you're here. You're on mute, but you're here. And I'm nice to see you. We've been talking on the phone.
Nice to see you too, Marlene.
We wanted to have you here from the from your perspective with respect to conservation, sustainability issues related to that. So we wanted to hear from you with respect to the wetlands protection and other things that we need to be aware of collectively. And then, see if anybody else has questions.
Sounds good. Is it my turn right now?
It is.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if you were still going through the agenda. So
yeah, you're number 3.
Oh, gotcha. So my name is Yoni Glogower. I'm the Holyoke Director of Conservation and Sustainability. I essentially advise and manage the Conservation Commission, which currently has 6 members. You know, since the 70s, as I think Jeff might have told you at a previous meeting, when the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act was passed, the role of conservation commissions, in addition to acquiring and protecting new open space resources, a big focus became regulating wetlands, any project that's in the vicinity of the buffer zone or within a wetland resource as defined by the Act, and also performing enforcement orders on any violations of the Act. So in the case of the reservoir, you know, I think it would be designated as a pond or lake, which has its own resource standards that need to be met if there's any project. And that can sometimes include other resource areas. So we might call the banks a resource area and the 100-foot buffer zone in all directions from that resource. So, you know, I don't really know where this committee is going in terms of the ideas that might be put forth, but you know, as it currently is with passive recreation or things that might be done in the buffer zone, it's relatively straightforward to permit projects. If we're gonna build like a dock for, I'm not assuming this is the direction you're going, but for example, you know, if a dock were to be added to the reservoir for watercraft to use or a pier, the Conservation Commission would have to consider a notice of intent application and would have to consider things like how many square feet are being modified, what are the impacts on the wetland resources, and depending on what kind of structures were being put in, might require compensatory mitigation to be created somewhere else in the vicinity, you know, part of the same wetland complex. Like if you're building a structure in it, you might need to create more wetlands elsewhere, and that can get pretty complicated very quickly. A lot of the projects we permit are only in the buffer zone, which is a little more relaxed in terms of the regulations. It still requires that type of scrutiny. So that's basically my several-minute pitch about what we do with the Conservation Commission. I'd be happy to answer any questions to the best of my ability or learn more about your ambitions.
Yoni, I think one of the things that will really be helpful will be if you keep an eye on the meeting when we have the abutters in. I'll take that back. If you'll keep an ear on that meeting so that you can keep us aware of all of the wetlands issues on the properties that the abutters might be talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And those are pretty obvious.
Right.
I mean, I don't have to explain what the abutting properties are.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you know already.
So you're going to invite them to a future meeting?
We are planning
Yeah.
to have the abutters in to talk about the way their plans might affect the reservoir,
Mm-hmm.
and what our ultimate recommendations to the city council and the planning board would be, well, and the water department, based on what they have to say and what our final decisions and concerns are.
Mm-hmm.
So your input is going to be exquisitely necessary at that point.
Okay.
Thank you.
So Yoni, go ahead, Terry. I'll yield.
Okay, thanks. Yoni, you talked about the buffer zone, but what is the buffer zone at the reservoir? Is it a way or?
You know, for the reservoir, which has banks, it's a water feature that has banks. So 100 feet in any direction from the perimeter of the actual water body would be the buffer zone.
Okay.
I think the parcel also has other wetland resources. Like that's just the most obvious one on the parcel. And, you know, we have our DEP wetland layer map, which hasn't been updated for like 30 years. It has all the major water and wetland features on it, but there's often more there that you only learn about by doing a wetland delineation, hiring an environmental engineer whose expertise is in that. And sometimes in the buffer zone of one wetland resource, you can have other wetland resources. So they can be compounded, and in that case, especially with riverfront, which is a special resource area that was only defined in 1996, you can have multiple wetland resources in the same area or overlap with buffer zones. And that kind of compounds the considerations for the Conservation Commission for a particular project. And sometimes in that case, the negotiation as well. Are there alternatives to this site design that would, you know, at least bring it farther out into the buffer zone and out of one of these areas? You know, that's kind of the back and forth that often takes place to figure out the plan that still functions as it's intended, but has the minimal impact to wetland resources to be able to issue a permit.
So, Yoni, the other.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks, Marlene. The other question that the committee seemed to have was about, does the city have any real vision or plans for the general area around Mount Tom? Are there specific, you know, in our role at the Conservation Commission, for instance, are there properties that are high priority for us to protect, or, you know, is there anything you can say about that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Jeff. You know, the process I've outlined, permitting and the WPA regulations, you know, by definition, they're very reactive. There's a project proposal that the commission is reviewing. With regard to the other role of the commission, actively conserving land, I think, I don't know, it's a more of a, I want to say, opportunistic process. You know, there might be like parcels that would be really good to protect in the future, but the opportunity to purchase them and protect them don't come around super often. So, you know, with regard to the Mount Tom area and in Holyoke in general, I don't know that there's like a particular, you know, code of conduct or, you know, something that's been decreed that we're following. But I was looking today at the 2018 Open Space and Recreation Plan, and I was reflecting that it might be good for this committee to take a look at those recommendations. So this was conducted not by the Conservation Commission. The Conway School was contracted to do it, but it included a lot of interviews with different department heads and community stakeholders. And Section 7 is all about the analysis of needs for open space and recreation protection in Holyoke. And, you know, again, it's a little messy because some of these are, you know, in competition with one another. They come out with different outcomes. There's a section on mountain corridor and connectivity for the Mount Tom East Mountain Range. So, you know, by that logic, any parcel within that area on the western side of Holyoke is a high priority for a variety of ecological reasons. And then right after it is protecting water resources. 96% of respondents say protecting the drinking water supply is important to very important to them. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure what I'm trying to pull from this, but you know, you have a lot of different values, even when they're not directly competing with one another. It's, I don't know, the question of priority becomes messy very quickly. You know, to give two recent examples, recently the Conservation Commission protected Glutok Woods, which is a 50-acre parcel on Mountain Road. we're holding a conservation restriction by Kestrel Land Trust. And it really fit into a lot of these areas very neatly. You know, it's part of the aquifer protection. There's good natural resources, potential vernal pool resources. And it's a bit of a different project than the one we're doing now around Scott Tower that we're working on with Terry Shepard of the Parks Department. You know, in that case, it is a nice, mature, deciduous forest, but sort of the pitch we've made is this is a relatively large tract of undeveloped land that's really close to Holyoke's developed city center. And in this case, what we're going for is offering that resource to our community members in an accessible way. And we're looking at urban heat island and other effects and looking for relief in a changing climate. So I don't know, both of these were opportunistic projects. You know, they made sense within these sets of values, but both of them kind of presented themselves. In both cases, the parcel owners were ready to sell, and we had a land trust partner ready to work with us, and we had the support of our city council and general community in both cases. So it made sense to move forward. I'm not sure if I'm just rambling at this point or if this is useful at all, but.
Could we get a copy of the open space and recreation plan somehow onto our cloud space or someplace?
Yeah, I'd be happy to send it.
I think what we ought to do is get it into the folder that Jeff Anderson Burgos has set up for us. So
Okay.
Yoni, if you could talk to Jeff, who comes in, I guess, at noon, to his office at City Hall, about putting that up for us, he can do that.
Okay.
You can just send it to me, Yoni. I'll put it up. I've been able to load things to the folder.
Okay. Yeah, I have a digital copy.
Great.
That was helpful.
So
Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you very much. That was really helpful.
Yeah.
Kip, is Kip on?
I don't think
I have a couple of phone numbers at the bottom, so, okay.
I'm afraid Kip is missing.
Okay.
Snowing, skiing.
I think you're right.
I know I'm
That
right.
could be. Look, it's going to snow again on Sunday. And go again too. So we've also then heard from Sue Ellen on the report of the trustees. Nothing else to offer from them, Sue Ellen. I think the next item then, with respect to new business, would be what. So I know that at our next meeting, Jennifer Howard from DCR will be able to attend to speak through the DCR's interest plans and perspective thinking on their property and how that's impacted with the Whiting Street Reservoir. Do we think at that meeting also we should begin to invite some of the abutters, or are we ready to do that? But as I think the way we had talked about this was trying to meet with all of the abutters first, and then understanding what sort of general public input process we want to put together to get some perspectives from the community.
Marlene, if I could butt in for a second.
You can.
Having Jennifer here, of course, is important, but she is representing one of the abutters.
Yep.
And what she has to say is very much part of what we need to hear from all of the abutters, the kind of information that we are looking for. So I think what we ought to consider at this point is whether or not we're ready to invite the abutters to join us at the next meeting, which will be 2 weeks from tonight, and start that conversation and see what kind of information we can develop from that before we make any further decisions about an open general meeting.
Okay. How many people, so one or two at a meeting, do we think, Sue Ellen, makes sense? I don't think we want to do more than two necessarily at a time.
We should also find out how many want to do it.
Yep.
If all those abutters, you only have two people that want to speak. But then again, if you have them all who want to speak, which would even be better. So I guess we should reach out to see how many would like to speak.
Okay.
A couple things come to mind. First of all, many of the abutters may not be aware of our committee at all. They probably don't have much understanding of what we'd be asking for them. Are there a series of questions that we want them to answer? So it sounds like it's primarily, the purpose is to hear from them related to what their plans for the area are, or what their concerns are as well, I suspect. But do we want to have a standard set of questions that we would be asking each of the abutters? And then another question I have is, would we really want to invite all abutters, or just some of the ones that we consider key? And then if others indicate interest, maybe we have a general opportunity for people to come. But I don't, we haven't really laid out a true vision ourselves, so we don't have much to share to them. We don't have much information to give them. So I'll stop there.
Jeff, just conversationally, I don't really have a true vision and part of where I was going with my thinking was the more information we got, the more we would be able as a committee to formulate a vision for the area. So, and I absolutely agree with you, we should develop a list of questions that we'd like the abutters to be able to answer. And how would you go about developing that list of questions?
I think most of the abutters would be probably happy to come, as long as they know our intent. We're a government committee, so you don't want people to be automatically defensive. Oh, what now? What? I think if they know it's just strictly informational and we're looking for their input too, it probably would make it easier and they'd be more willing to come and talk.
I have a suggestion, Sue, that point you made about DCR. DCR is an abutter. That's really well taken. But when I got those maps from Ty and Bond that I want all of you to look at,
I did.
that are up in the cloud, the abutters are clearly defined on the maps. And you might be surprised there may not be as many as some of you think there are.
And that's a good question. I mean, are we interested in just the abutters, or are there other crucial properties there that might just be one property, just a couple hundred feet away because they don't have an actual boundary that touches?
Yeah, well, that's a good point, because the ski area property happens to fit your definition.
Sure.
Right.
Well,
but please look at the maps. They're really informative.
Why don't we take a minute and make a list of the actual abutting properties?
Look at the map.
Well, it's not in front of me right now.
Well, look at it. It's perfect. It's really, it's a service that they've done for us. I'm not kidding you. I want everybody.
Yeah, I'm gonna go see.
I agree with you, but where I'm going is that let's think about who the real abutters are now, and that might give us a better idea of who we would want to invite to this kind of information gathering meeting.
Okay, hang loose and let me get up to my desk, because I have a hard copy, and I'll tell you who the abutters are.
Okay. I know it would include Wycoff.
Yeah, and you have the
Eric
Holyoke Gas and
Zooms.
Electric as well. Eric Shore,
Yeah,
Gas and Electric. I don't know if the trustees are there or not. Might be.
Might be right, but give me a second. Or pick up something else and I'll holler when I'm ready.
okay.
And do the minutes simultaneous.
You're amazing.
Well, you'll see. Okay, here we go. City of Holyoke. This is up on the top. City of Holyoke. Again, Holyoke City. That must have been all done with the G&E. Holyoke City, Mass Commonwealth, right almost on top of the reservoir. A little small piece. Wycoff, Mountain Park Associates, LLC.
Well,
That may be it.
So
There's one other map. Same map, but
looks like Yoni also has a question.
Yoni?
Just wanted to make sure, do you all know about our Holyoke Map Geo application that's online? You can click on any parcel. You can even click on a Abutters button and it'll tell you everything that's next to it.
Yeah, this does the same thing. Tells you
Same thing.
how
Okay.
big the site is.
So
Yeah, City of Holyoke, Wycoff, City of Holyoke. That means it's probably water department. Mass.
so I have it up. I could share my screen and you guys could all.
Okay.
Do it. Great.
At least I say I can do that. We'll see.
Good, because I can't.
So Sue Ellen, so it doesn't look like I can. It says host disabled participant screen
You're a
share.
host. You're a host. You should be able to. It's not green at the bottom?
It is, but it still says host disabled.
Host disabled. Yep, I see. So when we go to set up this,
When I set this whole thing up, Marlene double-checked this with Scott. We set it up so that every member of this committee is a host. Just so we could do this sort of thing.
so maybe that's something we can do with Scott.
Well, I did it.
That's on.
I thought I did it.
Yeah, I know.
So that may be an issue if we want people to present to us,
Just for now, I just put a link in the chat of.
Yeah, thanks, Kate.
Right to the map geo. I searched for the abutters to the property.
Can people see that?
Well, if you go into the chat, you see the link and you would click on it on your own.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah. But for sure, to Jeff's point, the owners of the ski area properties, the different owners would have to be considered part of it.
I just wondered, maybe we can do this all tonight, but it just seems like it's important enough, for us to maybe spend a meeting, really laying out the questions, laying out who we want to invite, and also think about whether or not we want to allow them to ask us questions, because are we also considering that as public input, or is that for the general public meeting? Again, maybe we can do that tonight, but it's just a thought.
Well, we could certainly start.
Yep.
So what information do we think we want them to share with us?
Certainly what their intentions may be going forward, I suppose. If they have any plan.
Yeah, I think that's right, Harry. I just wonder about, maybe the first question might be, what is your hope for since we're about the Whiting Street Reservoir, what is your hope for the Whiting Street Reservoir? Just
That's very
connect that to
Get down
what we're doing,
on
and then
I think so. Good idea.
And then Jeff, you said the abutters' future plans for their property?
yeah, I think you have to be careful how you ask that, but you know, any future plans you can share with us. You know, your intended use of your property, I think, is a reasonable question.
Yep. That's two.
Be nice to know what the current use of the property is too.
I think that's a good question.
I think it would be interesting to know whether there were potential uses they could envision for the reservoir that would either be very beneficial from their viewpoint or detrimental.
Maybe how their property could interact with the reservoir property and vice versa.
Say again?
How their property could interact with the reservoir and vice versa, how they think the reservoir could interact with their property.
And when we invite them to ask them questions, is this a formal written ask or a casual ask, a casual?
Well, I think it should be a formal written ask. Of course, we have no stationery. Maybe we could use city council stationery for this. But certainly if we're going to give them a proposed list of questions, it could be, you know, a letter that would, one, say briefly what we are and how we got appointed. And two, that we feel it's important to get an overall picture of that area of the city in which the reservoir lies, and would therefore like to have the abutters' thoughts on this, and some of the following, or you know, would you come and talk with us and include in your thinking or what you'll tell us the answers to the following questions. It can be a lot better written than that. This is just off the top of it.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah, that's pretty good. They could, instead of answer, so we're not sounding like their aunt, we'll make it, you know, how they would respond to these questions, something. Somebody could write it, and that's a good start.
Well, we can get it written and then send it out to all of the members of the committee for group editing. But let's get back to the questions. I think I've written down everything that's been asked so far.
I have 4.
Okay.
I guess it wouldn't hurt to ask who's responding. What's their role to the property?
Say that again?
It wouldn't hurt to ask who's responding or who's answering the questions and what their role is with regards to the property.
Yep.
Yep.
I think others asked a similar question, but I was going to consider, have you considered conservation protections for your property? Is that too leading a question?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think that's a great question.
Yeah, but it's absolutely too leading. But I'll write it down. I'm just taking the notes.
Well, hey, I mean, we're a committee here, you know. So
I'm only
we don't
kidding.
have to,
I'm only
you know,
kidding.
again, it's a leading question, so it
is indeed.
indicates that again, there might be other leading questions here as well. But
Sure.
I love that question.
But I'm afraid that they'll think that we as a committee might have ulterior motives or,
Yeah, I do too.
yeah. I think that's a casual conversation when they're at the meeting.
Well, I think in the introduction of who this committee is, we have to be very explicit about we have no preconceived ideas and really need to have a good, well-rounded idea of their thinking in order to arrive at the appropriate recommendations that we were asked to design.
Yeah, that's good.
I mean, it's always the way you ask a question.
Yep. Well, we'll have time to all go over them.
Right. Any more questions? Any other thoughts?
So would our idea be to construct a letter with an introductory paragraph and questions and get these sent out in advance of the meeting in 2 weeks? Or beyond that?
Well, given the fact that people have to have time to respond and think about what we're asking, we may be talking about the first meeting in March for this. I don't know how fair it is to ask people to show up in 3 days, nor is it very fair for anybody to expect us to have this idea of a letter and contacting all of the right people done overnight. We are volunteers.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
I do.
And they did wait a year to get us activated.
That's true.
Yeah. It was the COVID year.
It was the COVID year.
Right.
2020
Apparently it
never
still
happened.
is.
Okay. Is there any more we want to run through tonight? Any more questions?
No, I guess I have a question. Maybe I wasn't listening. Maybe I was sleeping here. But the questions that we're going to propose to the abutters, are they going to write us a brief thing in return before we have the meeting, or is this just questions that they're going to answer at the meeting?
I think questions they want to answer at the meeting. I don't think we want to have them supply written answers.
Okay.
Yeah, because the next question would be, are we going to grade the punctuation? You know, they should talk about it when they get here.
Yeah.
Then we can grade the grammar.
Then. and find out what their real plans are.
As long as somebody grades the grammar in the letter before it's mailed.
So I think, in my mind, I think we need to get through the abutter process before we begin then to think through enough information to construct any sort of a public process.
I agree.
Absolutely.
The public process really should be an explanation of what we've been doing and what our findings have been.
Yep.
And then ask for comment from the people attending. And we're nowhere near that yet.
Agree.
Right.
Did we decide to invite Jennifer Howard at the same time as the rest of the abutters, or did we think
Do we
could
want to have
invite
her at our
for
meeting in
next-
2 weeks?
She's an
Well, I think
abutter.
that would be more efficient for her.
One possibility, I think, is if she comes at the next meeting, you can sort of test run the questions we've thought up to see if we're really getting the information we need with her. Also, you know, the list of abutters that I pulled up when I did the link that I sent you is it sort of randomly generated for me abutters within 300 feet, which is significantly larger list, I think, than what the question of who we would want to consider as an abutter is pertinent to how long it's gonna, how many meetings we'd want to take to talk to abutters and how long that process will take us.
Right.
Good point.
So maybe the agenda for our next meeting would be to invite Jennifer, begin to ask her those questions so we understand the construct of what we're getting for information, and confirm the list of who we want to invite.
Yes.
Yeah, finalize. Yeah, I think we could finalize our questions. You know, we all would have had a chance to look at them and you know, maybe comment, you know, through the process, and then we could finalize that as well.
So that sounds like our agenda for the next meeting. Do we have any other business for this meeting?
Well, we want to get back to Mike and see what his question was, if we have time, and we appear to.
Sure.
Okay, Mike.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you said earlier that the Water Commission has 100% ownership of the property. And I was just curious, what's the relationship between the Holyoke City Council and the Water Department? Does the City Council have any authority to override, or do they have to approve, or vice versa? Any plan that's come up by the City Councilman?
Given the information that Crystal gave us the 2 times she was with us, the answer to that is that the City Council really has no oversight legally over what the Water Department does. They may, and we have not asked this question, it's one that we'll have to get to, they may have to approve any bond issues that the Water Department might need for future management of the property. But at this point, the Water Department is planning to do the repairs of the dam on Whiting Street Reservoir. Does that help?
Yes, yes. Thank you. I went to that one meeting and I was really concerned about where the City Councilmen were going with this whole idea of generating revenue, et cetera, et cetera. So that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a somewhat related question, if I may.
Of course, Kate.
It's just when I agreed to be on this, I got the list of what our charge is as a committee, and it enumerated what people would be on the committee. And it says there would be a representative of the water commissioners. Do we have a representative of the water commissioners on the committee?
No, they have not come up with anyone.
Okay.
But they have attended, they did attend one of our meetings, Kate, and
Okay.
spoke with us.
But we're not getting regular input from them as part of this process.
No, we're not. We'd like to.
Yeah, okay. They just haven't identified somebody who will do it.
Yes, they have. They just left it open for us to contact them if they wanted us. They spoke at the second meeting and said they'd be willing to answer any questions we had at any time.
They'll come whenever we want them, but they're not coming regularly.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Dave, do you think that we should be sending them notices of all meetings?
Yeah, I do. I'll take responsibility for not doing that, because that was the issue of why Mr. Manzi was introduced at our meeting with Mr. Conti. I think Mr. Conti would like to have Mr. Manzi be the representative at any and all of these meetings.
Okay. I can take care of that one.
Thank you.
I apologize. I'll apologize to him. I didn't realize we should be doing that.
Yeah, and he may say, I wouldn't come, I don't want to come, but that's kind of the way we left it. That's why I added him to the list.
Okay, is there anything else that anyone wants to bring up this evening before we close the meeting?
Guess not.
Then we'll entertain a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
See you all in 2
Opposed?
weeks.